This is a Willets Point Shea Stadium bound 7 express train. The next and last stop is Willets Point, Shea Stadium.
Oh, yes, it is the Subway to Shea podcast. Anthony Rivera here with you, talking about all the news and happenings surrounding that team from Queens, the New York Mets. It's episode 255 from the Subway to Shea studios in my office. Make sure you're following Subway to Shea on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Subway to Shea. You can follow me personally at Rivera86. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify if you prefer to listen. But if you want to be a part of the chat, you want to be a part of the conversation, you're doing that right here on YouTube. You can support the show with super chat, super stickers, and super thanks. Try saying that 3 times fast. And you can email me, subwaytoshay@gmail.com. Any comments or questions you may have for me. And make sure to follow my guest who's coming on shortly, Dexter Henry on X, DHenryTV. Follow New York Post Sports on X at NY Post Sports and subscribe to their YouTube channel. Just to get this out of the bat, I told Dexter this. If you see me go out, if you see me lose connection here, it's because we lost power. There's a storm brewing and our grid is like really bad right now. So if I lose any power, I apologize for that. But we'll get to as much of this show as we can. And a lot to talk about with these New York Mets. So I'm going to get into this with my good friend, Dexter Henry, back on the show. It's been too long, Dexter. I think we'd had talked during the offseason. We haven't done anything in season yet.
No, nothing in season. It's been, this season.
But we haven't missed much, right?
No, we haven't. We haven't missed much at all, Anthony. This season has been, I don't even know, man. This has to be one of the most disappointing Met seasons that I could think of. Man, this seems disappointing. I mean, it's so disappointing. It's at the listen, there's Mets fans in here. I know the Mets fans haven't checked out. They love our content, all the good stuff. But even today, man, today I'm in the studio. I'm in the newsroom. I've got the game on. We know the World Cup was about to start, and I'm watching the Mets 10-3 lead in the going into the 9th inning. And I thought in the back of my mind, this is Atlanta. Something can happen here because it's Atlanta. Of course, right?
Of course.
And then to watch them blow it, and when it got to 10-8, I said, they're going to lose this game. Now, I was wrong, but would anybody have been surprised?
No.
The way this Met season is gone?
No, you always look for somewhat of a silver lining, maybe some turning point for the team to turn in the right direction. Man, they're up 10-3. Even then, I'm like, this team has to get to 500 for me to feel something again for them.
Yep.
But to go up 10-3 in the 9th and then let this team come all the way back to 10-9, it's just the same stuff we've seen year in, year out from this team, the same type of mistakes that they have put on us as fans. And, they sit right now 37-53, last place in the NL East, and they are 16 games back, 11.5 games back of the wild card. Dexter, it's July 5th, man. We have 3 months we have to sit through more of this. I remember coming on with you, I think it was, did I start 2022 with you or 2021?
22. It was 22.
Okay,
we first connected in 2022. Yeah.
We had all that good vibes going from 2022 up until like September. 2023 came, and I remember coming on your show with some of the worst weeks that this Mets team has endured.
Oh yeah, I remember those days. Yep.
And I had season tickets at that time. I probably like a 20-game package, but it was a lot of games to go and sit through with that New York Mets team, especially when they were losing. I'm telling you right now, this team is worse. And they have better players on paper, better players, and it's been awful.
This is, everybody knows here I grew up a Mets fan. Outside of when I was, I think, how old was I then? I was 10 years old, 10 years old. That's 92 and 93. We're talking about the worst team money could buy, that era of Mets baseball.
Yeah.
This is right there. This is right there with those teams. And I will also agree that this team has more talent than those teams. And the 92 team had some talent on it, but this is bad, right? And I don't know how I'm trying to figure out how they can be this bad. I mean, listen, I'm sure we're going to get into this. I know we have a lot to talk about. David Stearns, who I understand will not be going anywhere, and nor did I expect him to, but we have to call it like it is. Everything's been a swing and not everything for this season's been a swing and a miss, except with the exception of the kids he's called up. Those are literally the bright spots of the Mets season.
Yeah.
After that, what do you feel excited about? I saw somebody in the chat just said today's win felt like a loss. I agree. Shout out to Green Machine 82. I agree with you. I understand where that is, where this is for the fan base, and I think this fan base is looking for answers. Anthony, I want to say something that I had said the other day on the show and I know we're going to talk about reacting to Steve Cohen's comments. But one of the things I said, Anthony, was the problem for the Met fan is you just mentioned 2023, and he said how this is worse. But you feel like you've seen this before.
Mm-hmm.
This feels like the same movie you've seen before. And I get why it's frustrating for the fans. I really do. I really understand, because this is supposed to be different with Steve Cohen. The team's supposed to spend money. This was supposed to be sustainable. I mean, these are things Steve Cohen's talked about. The Mets are – do you feel like they're close to sustainability?
I don't. And the fact that – and we're going to get into this shortly, but the fact that Steve Cohen said he's extremely worried about the future, said that straight up to your colleagues.
Yeah,
I mean, like, he did not sugarcoat anything in this conversation. I mean, there's some things that I wish he doesn't talk about and that he does. I feel like, I don't know. To me, I feel like Steve needs a little bit more like media training, maybe. I mean, I know he's just speaking from the heart and stuff, but I feel like some things like maybe don't say. This I'm okay with, because, I mean, he's not, putting us on to, next season we'll be back. Like, we don't know. This team last year had the ¡1 farm system. Now, all of a sudden, we don't know where they're at right now, because a lot of players have taken a have been injured, have taken a step back. They have not been good. Like, the whole organization from top to bottom has just not had a good year. And it's just frustrating to watch the team day in and day out when you have guys like Lindor, who's supposed to be an all-star, Soto, who is an all-star this year. We'll talk about him a little bit later. But all the frustration and the talent that has not come through, and all the moves that David Stearns made to reshape this team. And I don't know about you. I bought in the offseason. I thought we needed a change. And I was okay once the moves were made, because I'll be honest, I didn't want to see Pete go, and I didn't want to see Edwin Diaz go. And once they were gone, I was like, okay, I have to buy into this, because, we need to support the players that are going to be on this roster, and we need them to be good. And they just have not been. It's just been a disappointing year and a frustrating year. At least in 2023, we kind of knew there was going to be change. We knew Epler was going to be gone.
Yep.
We kind of had some semblance of knowing Bug was going to be gone. Actually, David Stearns, I think, was hired, and maybe in September, that there was that talks that he was going to be hired and the move was going to be made. And then finally, I guess the next day of the season, he was officially hired.
Yep.
But now it's, 2 years of, let's be honest, crap. It's felt like 2 years of crap back to back. And there's no change in sight, right? David Stearns isn't going anywhere. He's going to stay through his entire tenure. And you said you felt that way. I feel the same way that was going to happen. We kind of knew it was going to happen.
So that was one of the things when Cohen said it that I felt conflicted about. When he said I don't want to misquote him here, but he said it's a 5-year deal. David Stearns and my colleague Joe Sherman followed up and asked him, right? He said, hey, are you saying that he's going to be here for all 5 years? And then he went back and sort of pivoted a little bit, because first I got the quote here. He said he would live out his 5-year contract, the contract that runs through 2028. And then when Joe asked him again, he said, well, you know what? We'll see how things go. Which, here's the thing, and I know some Mets fans may agree or disagree with me. I do not think, and Stearns has missed on a lot this offseason, and I was optimistic like you too, Anthony. I don't think that, excuse me one second. I don't think that they need to make a change at the top in management for change's sake. This is year one of Stearns really having the team in his vision. And I rocked with some of the moves. The only move I really did not like, and I think you and I have texted and talked about in the offseason, I didn't like the Diaz, losing Diaz. That I was not a fan of. Nimmo, I supported that trade. Does that trade look good? The way Simeon has played? No, especially offensively, no. Pete Alonso, I was kind of whatever on that. Diaz was the one I did not agree with.
I think we were both at the top of the Diaz one of not being. I mean, and then again, if they have him on the team now, I mean, he's basically on the IL, so we kind of it's a lose-lose situation. But I think the fact that the way that the team handled that situation, bringing in Devin Williams first, and then kind of dilly-dallying with Edwin Diaz, and
didn't like it.
It's just there's still these issues. Steve Cohen's now the owner of the Mets, and the Wilpon era is gone. But it seems like there's still remnants of Wilpon stuff that happens in this organization.
Yes, I completely agree. It feels like the Wilpon stink, for lack of a better term, is still on this organization. Now, look, I do think continuity matters with organizations. I don't think you can just change everything all the time. Oh, let's get Stearns out of here. No, because we've seen the Mets do this time and time again. If Stearns is your guy and you believe in him, let him see through multiple years where he actually has a team with the players that he wants. Let's see that through. That's probably going to take him through next year, okay? If through next year there isn't any improvement, I think that then Steve Cohen has to take a really hard look at him. You can't just say he comes back in year 5. He might not fit, but you got to give him – it took 2 years to transition the team to where it is now. That hasn't been good. You now have to let him see what the team is like in the image that he wants. You have to give him that chance to do that. I'm willing to still give him that chance. Am I thrilled with what David Stearns has done thus far? No, of course not. The results aren't good, and it's a results-based business. I just didn't like Cohen at first saying he's going to live out the 5-year contract. I'm like, I'm about continuity, but I don't know if Stearns has earned that sense of security, okay? Now, here's the thing. I'm not trying to put my foot in my mouth here. If you want sustainability, you can't just change everything all the time.
Right.
I know Mets fans are going to like this, but you got to look at the Braves. You got to look at even the team across town and the Yankees, okay? Sometimes you got to stick with the process sometimes. But Stearns is on the hot seat. We're not acting like we don't know. He's going to get next season, probably most of next season. If it doesn't turn around, he's going to have to choose the right manager, all that stuff. But to your point about Cohen, I like that he's honest and will talk to the media. And I love that he talked to my colleagues, John Heyman and Joel Sherman. And I thought they did a great job. I thought they asked the right questions that needed to be asked that New York baseball fans, Mets fans want to know. I thought they did a great job with the interview. However, sometimes I'm like, sometimes you can keep things a little bit closer to the chest, Mr. Cohen. So, or don't. I know you want to support David. I get that, but you don't have to say he's going to live out the 5-year contract. He caught himself, and I'm glad he did, but sometimes I wish he could change. And I get it. Some fans are going to want Stearns to go. I know some fans are not going to agree with me. They're going to want Stearns gone. I get that too.
I said now he's on the hot seat, and if next season is not a turnaround at all, then he's probably gone. I mean, this is possibly a setback of a couple of years now at this point, because you go into 2024, and we talked about this on the show in 2024. It just felt like at the end of that season, the Mets were making a turn as an organization for the better. They had a deep playoff run. They showed some adversity going through Atlanta, the wild card game, overtaking Philly that won the division. Like, there were steps that were being put in place where, in previous, seasons, that 10-9 game, they're losing that, right? Like, they're losing that game in 2024. It felt different. It felt like a change. And then they get Soto. They kind of pry Soto away from the Yankees, and you're like, oh wow, like we're really in the right step. The farm system it is highly touted, and now we don't know where we're at right now, and it's like we're just trying to get through ending this season and trying to figure out where we're going to go in the offseason. Another manager. This is like, what, 4 or 5 managers in a 6-year time span? It's been crazy. And, honestly, I know a lot of Met fans are upset about this, and we'll get to some of the chat there too. But, some people would think the Met fans have probably been as light on this team this year because we've had the Knicks, we've had the World Cup, training camps coming up in August. This team has not faced probably the wrath that a lot of fans probably would put upon them because of everything that's going on right now in sports.
I think the blue and orange basketball team in the city saved the Mets. I was at Citi Field for the first time this spring, obviously because I was rehabbing from my Achilles injury and had not got out to a game. And I was out there with some friends from work, somebody was celebrating a birthday, and it was against the Phillies last Sunday. And I could not. The energy, the Mets fan was so apathetic because Phillies fans were walking around and talking smack, and Mets fans were just like, yo, how about those Knicks? What the Knicks did to the Sixers, right? Like that. This is what the Met fan has to do now. They got to clap back with the Knicks, right, Anthony? Because there's nothing else they could say. And the energy just from Mets fans in the building was just so whatever. And I looked around and I said to myself, it got worse this week. Could this get any worse? And when do Mets fans start not showing up? When does that happen?
And that's a question that I kind of wished that John was asking more of, like, straight to like trade deadline, the business part of questions. But Joel was getting into the fan stuff. And I kind of wish he would have asked that about the fans not showing up, because if you remember, Steve on X, very adamant about talking to the fans, like when the team does good, but then he falls out and you don't hear from him for a while. And he talked about the fans showing up and not showing up after 2024 towards the end of the season when they were playing well and wanting to see the stadium packed. The attendance was the best that it's ever been in 2025, and that team fell apart. So I wish he would have gotten to something like that, because we get to August and September, we're talking about, like I said, NFL gets started, NBA training camp, and NHL's gets up again. So a lot of fans are going to start finding other things to do.
Yeah. And look, I'm going to say this, as long as I've worked in sports journalism, and I've always said this, and obviously as a sports fan, we're all sports fans here, and we still support teams and spend our money. I always will support the fans. If you do not like the product on the field, on the court, you do not have to show up. I think that's the best way you can send a message to ownership that you were tired. You do not have to show up. I understand people love their Mets. I get it, man. I get it. But you don't have to show up. And that's why I looked around and I said, well, wow, it was a beautiful Sunday last week, and the stadium was full. It was a great crowd. Great day, great crowd. But I said to myself, this is part of the problem right now. I know it still was June, but I'm like, this is part of the problem. Fans are still showing up and spending their money. And I don't blame any fan that says, I don't know if I want to spend their money. I like you, Anthony, wish that Cohen had got asked that question, because I thought about that too. I wish he was asked, are you concerned about the ballpark not being, let's just say, I won't say full, but it looked like a ghost town in August and September. Are you concerned about that? Because the way they're headed right now, that's what it's going to be. You're not going to get enough people to just show up to just watch AJ Ewing and Carson Bench, who've been bright spots, and I like both those guys. I love what they're doing. I think they are a reason to watch, or Nolan McLean start. So shout out to Carlos. I love this. Cohen challenge fans to show up. I challenge Cohen to put a quality team on the field. Yo, fair game. You know what I mean? Fair game. I will always support the fans in that message right there. And the fans don't, as I said, the fans don't have to show up every time there's a product like this. But I think the frustrating part is what you talked about, Anthony, in that it felt like there was promise after 2024. I remember talking to you at the end of 2024. And I remember you coming on Straight Out Flush with me at the end of last season, right after the disaster. And they can't get in, they lose to the Marlins. And we talked about that. And I still think even then, you were hopeful.
Yeah.
Are you hopeful now?
I think Cohen said it, extremely worried. I think that's the best coined phrase that he said. That I feel like that's
Yeah.
what every Met fan feels at this moment. And shout out to the chat and everyone that's in the room right now. Green Machine saying it's hard for even the most fervent diehards to not become apathetic when in an expanded playoff format with 3 wild cards, your team can't even claim a spot. And that I feel like every time the MLB gives fans olive branch or leave to more playoff teams, or like even in 2020, only 4 teams in each league didn't make the playoffs. Mets were one of them for some reason. They just can't figure it out. They can't figure out the DH. They can't figure out this ABS system now. Like everything that's been out there to help this team can't figure out, and it stinks to feel like that. Maureen in the chat saying the highlight of the season is watching the rookies develop, which I agree with. I said that today. I was like, I'm watching this team right now because of players like AJ Ewing, who hit a home run, and Carson Bench and Christian Scott, and wanting to see all these prospects because we already know what we're getting from some of these veterans, and the what was supposed to be the baby Mets, they haven't been living up to their expectations, and that's probably a big part of the problem with this team that's going on right now. So, Carlos Ortiz saying, I've been watching this movie since 89, 84 to 88 was the last great run for this team. And he's right. And even that team only made the playoffs twice, because imagine if they would have had the playoff format that they had now, that they had then.
They would have, right. Carlos, I'm going to challenge you on this. I will say there was one other short but great run. I will say 99 to 2001. I know it's a 3-season span. You could even include 98 in that if you want to talk right after them getting Piazza. I think for the Met fan at that time, that was exciting. It was one of those where you felt they were going up. Then you might want to say there's 05, 06. We know what happened after 06. We do not have to talk about that.
But you could throw in, yes, it sucked. And I was there in the stadium when they blew that division.
So was I.
But 07 and 08, like, they were there until the last game of the season. Did they not make the playoffs? Yes, they Metsed it. If you want to,
that's what hurts to run. But you're right.
Yeah.
Those were good teams with players that I think a lot of Mets fans loved. Reyes and Wright were coming into their own.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have 2015, 2016, and 2024. This is all we're talking about. Yeah. I'm 43 years old. If you're a Mets fan older than that, and I was a little too young for the mid 80s, but to late 80s, but I didn't really become a Met fan until I was in 88. I didn't really know,
I assume they would include that it would be 69 to probably 73, because they were still winning. They still had winning seasons. They didn't make the playoffs, but 69 to 73, that run. And then after that, it became a house of horrors.
Listen, but that's the thing. And Mets fans have watched the Yankees have sustained success, and the Yankee fans like to complain about what they're going through right now. And you've been to the studio, you've met a lot of people I've worked with, Anthony, and a lot of producers who are Yankee fans, and they're like, I'm like, you want to trade places? I literally asked the producer, like, would you like the Mets and Yankees trade places right now? They're like, no, we don't want to do that. At least there's sustained success. The Braves had last year was a down year for the Braves, and look where they are, right back.
Yeah.
That I feel for the Mets fan, because that never seems to happen for the Mets.
And that's what they claimed that we were going to be getting.
Yes, but that's the problem, Anthony. I don't want to go so far to say the Mets fans were sold a bad bill of goods, right? Like I think it's a little bit too far or too early to say that, but I understand if you're getting there, is what I'll say. I understand if you're getting there, because you're like, this is not what Steve Cohen told me. Forget the fact that Steve Cohen said they'd win a championship in 5 years and all that stuff. Forget that. The thing I was thinking to see was like, okay, where's sustainability? And to your point, Anthony, following 2023, and I remember talking to you in May of 2024 when you and I were both on the blow everything up, and boy, were we wrong about that. And the Mets turned things around. So after 2024, you're feeling great. And now you're like, to your point, where are they? You don't know where they are. You're not sure of the direction. You're worrying about who the next manager is. You're worrying if any free agents would even want to come here. After you got Juan Soto, you thought all that was gone. All the stuff that I just mentioned, you're like, oh, no, the Mets won't have to worry about that. Now you do.
Yeah. That was a big topic of discussion was how is Cohen going to make this team sustainable winner every year, and how is he going to get out of that muck where this team is known for not being able to bring in free agents unless we overpay for them.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't feel like we're kind of out of that yet. I think more and more players would play here in Queens. Obviously, we're going to have to pay a little bit more than we would. But the thing is now, is David Stearns going to pay for these players, or is he going to do this thing where he brings in, Frankie Montas for 2 years and tries to reclimate this guy? Like, he needs to start, changing a little bit of, blending his philosophy with blending in, what needs to make this team a good product on the field.
I agree with you on that. As you said that, I was thinking about my former colleague at WFAN, Daniel McCartan, who before Stearns came on was always saying to me, Stearns can't be small market Stearns. He can't be that. She would always say they can't have that mindset. And
she's still killing him on there.
She is.
I still see her killing him on there.
Shout out to Danielle. I'm gonna send her a text after this. I'm sure she is. No, he can't. I agree with you. I think the mindset has to be evolved. I think you have to adapt. I'm not saying, and I don't think you are either, Anthony, just because I know over the years I've gotten to know you and I know kind of how you look at the game. But I think that you have to, it's not throwing money at all, the biggest free agents, because we just spent money. I think Maureen said that in the chat. Maureen's right. We spent money. It's about spending it right. It's about building sustainability. It's about winning on the margins. This is what good teams do. And listen, I get it's not a salary cap sport, but it may become a salary cap sport.
Oh, yeah.
So it might ever become more important with team building and winning on the margins. Winning on the margins, when I say that, just to be clear to everybody, that doesn't mean, in my opinion, bargain basement hunting. Yes, sometimes you got to find good value. Good teams find good value, and then they know how to flip that value. But it's saying sometimes when you have to fill a need, you got to go. If you want to compete with the Dodgers, at least the way the rules are right now, you're going to have to spend sometimes for some guys in their prime. Sometimes are you going to be, and John Heyman asked him this question, do you think David Stearns, he asked Cohen this, do you think he would go and spend on a guy outside of his philosophy, a pitcher, for example, who might be an ace that maybe is a little bit past his prime or the age window? And I think he was kind of, I didn't know if John was doing this, but he felt like he was maybe angling to like talking about a Tariq Skubal, who could be a free agent. But I also would say, why would Tariq Skubal want to come here right now, other than money? But that's a whole nother thing. I think what you're saying and I'm saying is Stearns can't be rigid. There has to be fluidity. There has to be some flexibility, right, in terms of how he's going to build his team. I believe this about everything in life and like business. I think you can have your beliefs and that's cool. But if you're just solely got the blinders on and you don't see anything else, Anthony, it's not going to work. It's like if somebody said to you, hey, man, love Subway to Shea, but I think this graphic could look a little bit better. Maybe you need to refresh this. Sometimes with our shows, you got to refresh, try something different. You got to look at something. You at least got to give it a look. You got to try it.
Yeah.
Right? You got to try something else, because how would you know how good you can be or how great you can grow? But you got to try something different.
And also, follow through probably on what you said you're going to do, right? Like if you want to focus, and the whole focus this offseason was run prevention. I mean, this team is giving up more runs than anything. Let me tell you, I can't watch the game from the start because I got to put my son to bed.
Understood.
And then, I don't get to start watching the game until maybe 8:30. By that point, it's already 6-7 runs that they're down by. And it's like, should I continue watching this debacle take place? And then they're giving up these runs, and then they're not playing good defense because they're playing players out of position and trying new things. It's like he talked about in his press conference this past one, we got to really work on the walks. Do we? Because that was a problem in 2024. And now we're 2 years into this and you still haven't figured it out yet. So something's got to give. So it's just very frustrating, this whole thing around. And, watching this team has just been, it's like, you got to keep the eye like that. You ever seen that GIF where they're like keeping your eyes open to make sure you watch
Clockwork Orange stuff?
Yes, that's what it definitely feels like. Brad in the chat saying, what's so frustrating about this year so far is wanting to see a lineup with Ewing, Soto, Lindor, Bichette, Polanco, Benj, and Alvey. And, obviously Polanco coming back, I didn't think he was going to come back this year, but he's in rehab right now. Even Luis Robert Jr. is doing his rehab, but we haven't had continuity in any part of the lineup. Soto and Lindor have only played maybe less than 20 games together. It's been a very, very rough time for this team to try to connect and be one. You talk about the World Baseball Classic taking some of the players too at that time. So, the team has been frustrating. Carlos Ortiz saying fans are showing up because they can't cancel their season tickets. I believe a little bit of that as well. And who knows? I mean, I had to let my tickets go. Obviously, they get expensive, and you got to focus on other things in life. So, I even haven't gone to a game this year. I don't know if I'm going to go to a game this year, and if I do, it's probably for wanting to be at the stadium and eat some food, and that's not a reason to want to go to a Mets game. You want to go and watch a good team play on the field like we've seen in the past. Hayden in the chat saying, hate to sound like this, but I'm kind of done listening to Steve Cohen. I will believe it when I see it. I know a lot of fans feel the same way. And to a certain extent, like sometimes I even say that, in my content creator chat, I'm like, you know what? I think I'd be okay if Stearns didn't talk sometimes. Definitely when he posts on X, because I feel like every time he posts on X, then the team goes on a tailspin after he's like, oh, look at how Bichette did today. And then, every time he says something, it always falls back on us.
Always. It's like, at this point, you're just like, I don't tell him I appreciate one thing I'll say about Stearns and Cohen that I have a big appreciation for is that they are present. They'll talk to the media. They've never run away. I have a ton of appreciation for that. They've stood up. They've taken it. But it reminds me of the question that Joel Sherman asked. I think it was the first question they asked in the whole interview. And he said, and Joel's covered New York baseball for a long time, has said, look, we've seen this movie before. We've seen the president or GM sit at the press conference and say, hey, we're firing the manager, but it's not on the manager, it's on me. But then they still have their job. And again, I'm not saying that David Stearns shouldn't have his job. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is Joel's question is more than fair. All right, if you're going to sit there and say and take all the bullets, which is somewhat admirable, are you going to fire yourself too? The owner's never going to fire himself. The GM's never going to fire himself. If it's really on you, why are you still here and Carlos Mendoza isn't? It's more than a fair question.
Yeah, and you mentioned continuity with the lineup. How about continuity, I guess, with the front office? I mean, if this doesn't work out, like, shouldn't it be a whole reset because that's what they've been doing. They've been firing the manager, or they fire his staff and put it on the next manager. And it should be like, if I'm bringing in a manager, I'm bringing in the whole staff together, and we're going to work from top to bottom that way. Instead, they fired his staff. Mendoza stayed. He got a new staff. Now Mendoza's gone, and that staff's going to stay with Andy Green, and that staff may stay with whoever the next manager is.
Possibly.
So
I generally don't like that. I personally generally don't like that for teams. I think if you're going to keep the GM now, then, and you're going to pick a staff, whoever's going to be the next manager, have everybody has to be in alignment. If everybody's not in alignment, I don't see this. I don't think you can piecemeal it together. Now, the Mets, either they believe in their brass at the top, Stearns and everybody else around, their player development, the guys down on the farm systems, they have to believe in that. But look, the other thing we also have to add is you alluded to this before, Anthony. A lot of these Mets players, the baby Mets we were excited about a couple of years ago, they haven't hit. And when I say hit, I don't even talk about just the play. I mean, like, just hit as players, as prospects, developing into good players. I mean, who of that core? Alvarez, disappointing for me this year because I had high hopes for him. I see this right here. Should the Mets call it with Beatty, Vientos, and Mauricio?
I think they should. At least, definitely with Beatty and Vientos. And I like Beatty. I met him at the Queens Baseball Convention. Nice guy. It's just, it hasn't worked out. It hasn't worked out. He's been given so many opportunities to take hold of a position or even bat in the lineup. He's batting every day, and it's just he hasn't been able to take hold of it and be consistent. Vientos,
I was done with him before the start of the year. I said it was time to move on.
After 2024, the ego, I feel like, went to new heights. I mean, you just even look at him this season, running past a sign from the third base coach and doubling down on that when he talked in the press conference.
Yep.
Some of these ABS challenges he's been wasting. I mean, we saw one the other day, strike right down the plate. Like, what? I just think that those two probably have to go. Mauricio may be willing to give him a little bit more time because he's coming back from injury, but he's on thin ice as well. And Alvarez, I mean, I only say he's a disappointment because, and I hate when people do this, when you comp Mike Piazza to him because he was a top hitting power prospect. We got to stop doing that. Yeah, he had the big 2023 where he hit a lot of home runs. Yes, he's been suffering a lot of injuries. But, this was a guy who was the number one prospect on the MLB pipeline of all of baseball. We're not just talking about the Mets, but all of baseball. And he just has not lived up to that hype. I'm willing to give him a chance because I know we got...
And he's had some freak injuries.
He had some freak injuries. Yeah. But remember how early we gave up on Travis d'Arnaud? And he came back to haunt us. This kid's still 24, 25 years old. He gets more of a leash to me than Beatty and Vientos do.
I agree. The reason I'll give him more of a leash to injuries, one, he does a good job managing the pitching staff too. That's where I'm giving him a little bit. There's some value with that, and I'm hoping the hitting can come back around. Beatty, I'm with you. Pretty much done. Vientos, I've been done before the start this year. I didn't even think he should have made the team. Personally.
Maureen puts it great. He's a legend in his own mind. I'm starting to feel like he is definitely thinking like that. I have a couple more comments here before. I kind of want to do a little deeper dive into that Cohen podcast for sure. But where was it? Carlos Ortiz, great representation of what this season has been. Stearns tore down the house, put up the walls, and forgot to put in the studs. Game for Wars saying they let Stearns cook, and he burned the kitchen and the house down. Radiant Valorant says the Mets have never seen sustainable success in their existence from 62 up until now. They have actually had sustained failures, and that's very sad for us Met fans. I mean, you cannot have put those three comments more perfect than they were right there.
Yeah, Radiant is 100% right about the history of the Mets. I think that's the most disappointing thing. Like, he's right. They've had sustained failure. And when they've had these bad errors or bad seasons, they just all seem to string together. Then they'll get out of it and there'll be a little bit of hope. Like, oh, Mets are back. Well, I shouldn't say back. It's like back to what? They're somewhat trending the right direction. And then it just doesn't happen. Most Mets fans, and please let me know in the chat, us in the chat, I'd love to know, like, I don't think you were alone, Anthony. I think most Mets fans post 2024 were probably as hopeful and optimistic as they had ever been.
Yeah.
And with good reason, in my opinion. Because these Mets fans, they're not crazy. We have smart fans that come and watch our shows and talk with us. They saw the way things looked like they were trending. It seemed like there was a good manager. It seems like Stearns had a plan. The owner was willing to spend money. Did you get Juan Soto?
Yeah. I mean, could you have been at more of a height after coming off that 2024 and signing Juan Soto? I mean, I feel like after that, once they signed Soto, they brought back Pete, then they started making some, they really started making some questionable moves. I can't complain about Sean Manaea because I wanted him signed after that. He's with that 2024.
Yeah,
the way he pitched, I thought that he had earned the contract. It was the Frankie Montas signing that really killed it. And some of the smaller signings that didn't round out this team to make them strong enough. That's where it happened. And then I even thought that his trade deadline was good. I mean, who would have thought that all of those players would have failed? We're talking about players with success. Cedric Mullins, Ryan Helsley, the closer in St. Louis, all of those guys, Rogers and Soto.
I love that trade deadline.
That was such a good trade deadline on paper, and they all just failed here. I don't know what changed. I don't know if the coaches tried to change anything with them, but it just didn't work out. And then he comes into this offseason, blows up the team, and as the other guys put it, they didn't put the studs in the house, and the whole house set on fire. So that's been the frustration. But going a little deeper into this Steve Cohen and what he said on the pod, and on not firing Stearns, we talked a little bit about it. He did really mention that why doesn't he get credit for 2024? Too early to make evaluations on him. And like you said, burning and churning is a terrible place to be when it comes to pumping in and pumping out these, executives and coaches and stuff like that. He said, and when it comes to the coaches, that no one's going to want to come here as executives if stuff like that happens. But which, yes, and maybe no. Like if you're going to offer these guys a lot of money, they'll come here. Like you offer any of them a lot of money, they'll be here. And like you said, mentioning the whole 5-year contract thing, but I even quoted what he said, going to evaluate as we go along. That's exactly what Cohen said on keeping him around. So, and then what Steve is looking for David Stearns to be reflective, adaptable, and that's what he thinks he is. And, he will figure out the changes unless, year 4 is still going bad. So, that was the whole thing on the whole David Stearns situation.
Yeah, the key word in that last thing you talked about for me was adaptable. Is he truly going to be adaptable? I mean, time is going to tell. Is he going to be adaptable?
This season I think we'll find out how adaptable he is at the trade deadline and into this offseason.
Does adaptable to you look like
selling
a fire sale? Okay, so we're on the same page. I think yeah. I saw John Heyman tweet this today, and I said I can't disagree. He said the Mets should trade everybody. Everybody should be on the trading block. And it pained me to agree with him on this. I think the only players he said that shouldn't be on the trading block was Soto, McClain, Christian Scott, AJ Ewing, and Carson Bench. And I was like, yep. And again, he then called himself, people like, no Lindor. And I'm like, we're here. I love Lindor, but we're here. Sometimes you got to be real and look at yourself and say, where are we? He's 33. I know he's a de facto captain. A lot of love for him in the Met uniform, man. But is this team, which is really going to be built around Soto going forward as a face, and this is assuming he doesn't opt out in a couple of years if the Mets don't get this, together. Yeah, I think you got to start thinking about that. Yeah. I think now it's going to be easy to move off Lindor. No, he's got 5 years left on his deal. He's got a lot of money. It's not going to be easy to move off that contract. But I don't think it's crazy to think about it. And everybody could go. Really, who of those outside of the guys that John Heyman tweeted about, who are you saying that the Mets can't trade, and why? Whatever you can get for good value by this deadline, do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. Hey, Devin Williams, he hasn't been so bad lately. Get him up out of here. Do what you do. Freddie Peralta.
Yeah,
high value.
Whatever you can get.
You might be able to bring him back anyway. Which,
yeah,
some people might say no to that, and I don't think they're crazy. Trade him. It's high. The value is high.
I think, and I'm only saying fire sale for this reason, is going into this lockout and the prospect of there being some type of a salary cap. If you can get under that cap right now, I mean, I know there's going to be kind of a little grandfather clause for a couple of years where they're going to allow teams to get down. But if you could jumpstart that, why not? Why not try? And I was thinking to myself, what if there's some players that I kind of want to keep here? Like, look how good Luke Weaver pitches in New York. I may not want to kind of trade him.
Somebody tweeted that at me today. One of my followers, Danielle, tweeted, and she said to me, I hope they don't trade Luke Weaver. And I said, I hear you, because he's been great, right? And this is actually one of the better Mets fans have seen in a couple years. And then the team is not winning at this time. But Weaver probably could get you a lot right now. A contending team would love Weaver and might give up 2 top prospects, or a top prospect and a mid prospect for him. I think you got to think about that long and hard. I really do. I understood where Danielle was coming from, why she didn't want to trade him. I get it, especially because you're like, hey, this is a good bullpen piece that we have under control for another year. Okay, I get it, but That's going to be valuable to some other team. And the Mets right now, as you look at this team, when will they be ready to win? Steve Cohen said he's worried. You say you're worried, Anthony. You're not even sure they'll be ready to win next year. Can't say that. And this year, playoffs were supposed to be the minimum.
Yeah.
So,
I'm
with you,
I
man.
can't even go as far right now as saying I don't think they're going to be good next year. I know it's early, but I don't. What is there? Like, are the prospects that have struggled, are they magically going to be good again? Like, and are they going to play up here? Like, are we just going to have a team full of prospects? Like, and Lindor and Soto? It's just we haven't gotten to a point where we have rotation pieces pitching 5 innings a game at the very least, and we're still doing this thing where we have openers and we're blowing out the bullpen. Like, luckily they've been pitching good, but at some point we're going to get to a point where they are tired again. And I'm looking at August, September, and this team could even have a worse month than they had in April. So, like, we're in a really tough spot right now, and maybe we do need to lock out. Maybe the best baseball that I watched so far this year, the WBC.
WBC, I knew you were going to say that.
Best month of baseball I've watched.
It's a long time ago now.
Yeah, it feels like 3 years ago.
It feels like back then, people weren't even sure if the Knicks were going to win the title.
Yeah.
Back then.
And that's when when did the playoffs start? April?
April 18th.
So
April 18th,
as soon as that WBC kind of finished, 2 weeks later, the playoffs started, and the Knicks went on the run. So,
Look, all I'm saying is nothing should be off the table with this team. It's the point I'm making. I don't think it's likely they trade Lindor,
right?
And I'm not saying they definitively. I'm just saying,
we're not saying to trade him. Like,
no,
I don't want the chat to get.
I'm just
upset or frustrated with that. It's just
I'm just saying
everything's on the table.
Everything's on the table is what I'm saying, except for these handful of players, and even Lindor would be on the table. I would even look at it. Not saying I necessarily would want to do that, but I would at least look at it. To your point about next year, though, Anthony, because there's so much uncertainty. We don't know if there'll be baseball next year. We don't know if there's a salary cap, what that's going to look like. How are you sort of grandfathering it down? Will they start reducing and making a sort of cap and trying to smooth their way into it? I don't know. I don't know. I think you have to start preparing for those things. But here's what I'll tell you, though. If there is a salary cap, which it's interesting. I have different feelings sometimes on certain sports and having caps and not having caps. One of the things I do like about a salary cap, though, is you can't just totally spend your way to the top. Mm-hmm. Although I think the problem in baseball has not been people spending. It has been the teams that do not spend. That's been more of the problem for me. But I think that it's going to be imperative for teams to build better, because it's really going to expose who the good franchises and the bad franchises are. If the Mets personnel and everybody around the team is still bad, where they have a cap, they're still going to stink, because they're still not going to develop right. They're going to overpay. They're going to mismanage the cap, because you're going to have to now manage the cap, really find players on the margins, not bargain basement hunt, but it's going to be even more imperative. You're really going to see who the good front offices are and how really sustainable it is. I think the ones that are still good now are still going to be good, and the ones that aren't, still not going to be good.
You even could throw the Yankees in there. Say what you want about them, but and I know they're struggling right now. I have no doubt they're going to turn it around at some point.
Right.
They go through this every year.
Yeah,
they have 1 month.
June, July, soon. It happens.
It happens every year. But if you ever look at, anytime a major player on the Yankees gets hurt and they have to plug them in from someone from AAA, that it like works out for those couple of weeks until the guy comes back. I haven't seen the Mets have any type of those players that they bring up. They either bring up some guy with a 7 ERA like they did today, or they'll bring up some, 4A type player that just will probably bat 190 until, like when they get these devastating blows to this lineup, it's devastating. Yep. And it's a struggle for them.
And it's always been like that. You're right. I'm thinking about who's the last guy that I saw come in, and it was like, oh man, like, all right, you might even think about keeping this guy up because he was so good. I mean, maybe we're going back to 2015 when Michael Conforto came up from Double-A.
Yeah.
Maybe
Conforto, maybe Daniel Murphy looking back on it. Jeff McNeil.
Jeff McNeil's a good one.
Wilmer Flores, maybe another
one.
Well,
and a guy who came up and stayed and was a very good role player, right?
Yeah.
Like in Wilmer Flores. Yeah. It's not good.
Game 4 says, I want a salary cap plus revenue sharing. G Money Stack saying salary caps remind him of the first and second apron of basketball. And that's probably what's going to turn into. And that actually shows too, because the Knicks are dealing with right now. I mean, their owner said, we're not going past the second apron. And Leon Rose had to figure out a way to, keep his big players together and, bring in a serviceable backup, which I think they did. I don't know how you feel about it, but
Andre Drummond, it's funny. I have something. There's a new episode of New York Got Game coming out tomorrow, and I did something talking about that with Andre Drummond and why I think he's a fine move for the regular season. I think what you're gonna, if baseball goes with somewhat of a similar structure to the NBA, where you have a luxury tax, a first apron, and a second apron, something like that, where the penalties are really harsh at the second apron level. That's what happens when you get to a team like the Knicks. You're a contending team, and you're around that. It's going to become more imperative to find value and develop. Development is going to be the key. Mm-hmm. Can you develop and get guys on cheaper contracts that can produce for you? The good teams are going to continue to do that. Again, I don't think teams should be afraid of the salary caps. I'm just all about good organizations are able to find ways to win. They know it's about development. They know it's about winning on the margins. They know all that. Bad organizations try to take shortcuts, overpay or underpay, and don't care about that. And we're going to, the Mets, I'll tell you what, Mets fan, I forgot who it was that talked about the Mets history since 62. If there is a salary cap, and I do agree, Maureen, there should be a salary floor. I absolutely agree with you on that. You're 100% right. I've been saying that. I think there should be always, if you're going to have a cap, you got to have a floor. There has to be a minimum spend.
Of course, yes.
Baseball has to have that. So I 100% agree with Maureen. If you're going to have a cap, we're really going to find out very quickly within a couple of years. Does that help or benefit the Mets? And have anything really changed? Has anything really changed? I guess the other thing I'd like with a cap, and I think the players will fight for this, is I want players to be able to get to their big contract quicker coming up from the minors. I think the system right now is completely unfair to players. I don't like that. Players should be able to get their money quicker.
And I think that was a part of MLB's, maybe it wasn't a high number, but I think that was a part of the MLB's plan, was to get some of these players to their contracts a little bit faster in one of their proposals. Now, when you think about the salary cap and kind of just these teams building, the only problem is that, in the NBA, there's really just the G League, right? In the NHL, they don't have, baseball has 3-4 steps to get to the major leagues, and a lot of these players don't do it. So I wonder if that is a little pause for concern when it comes to kind of trying to put this together. Even in the NFL, I mean, there's
all you have is college.
That's it.
And to your point, the other point you're making that's really good, that ties into that, and is in the hockey, you can find some other places to play. And I know you have the AHL, but basketball, you can play tons of places around the world. There's other good leagues. You can play in the Euro League. You can play in Spain. You can play in Greece. You can play in Australia. There are some other good leagues. You can still make a good living. Football, you really just have, it's college football, then it's the NFL or CFL. There's not much places to play American football. So the baseball, I know this is where everyone's playing. You could go play in Japan, and I get all that, but it's not the same. But for the process here, there's so many steps, is how do you work that out? Because are you going to have guys on, are you going to have something like the NBA has with two-way contracts, where you have guys coming up and down that you can have some of their time that's spent with the AAA club, but then how does that work for AA? It could get more complicated. With the NBA, you just have one league, the G League, to that. It's interesting. Again, I'm not completely against the salary cap, to be honest with you. I'm not. I think it actually would make baseball a little bit more interesting. You got to have a floor, though. I'm with Maureen on that 1,000%. You have to have a floor, because these cheap owners in baseball are the ones, to me, that have been totally impacting the sport. It's really shameful.
And you talk about the NPB and KBO, unless baseball makes like a FIFA where it's like all the leagues, right? Like right, the English Premier League, and then you have La Liga and Serie A and all that.
Well, that's what I love about
MLS.
soccer. Everybody can transfer within and all. Right.
Unless they do something like that with baseball, it's hard for me to picture, the players, it being the same for them coming from those leagues, unless they kind of make a federation out of it. I think that's the thing here. One more thing I want to get in, because we got into so much already from the whole Cohen thing, but I found this interesting on firing Mendy. He goes, it was time to give him a break. He called it, and I quote this from him, a mercy shot. I'm thinking to myself, can I get one of those? Can we get one of those mercy shots? Because it was all talk about, whether or not when Stearns and Cohen got together to talk about Mendy, if they were going to retain him for next year. And if they weren't, let's just let him go now.
Yeah, you're right. The fans need a mercy shot. You're so right. You're so right about that. Yeah, some fans, when I heard that, the thing that popped into me, and I talked about it on my show, was that some fans are going to say, okay, well, why don't you do this earlier? Why don't you give him that mercy shot and the whole team mercy shot? And I mean, look at what the Phillies did and how their seasons turned around. I'm not saying that would have happened for the Mets. That's not, I don't know that. I can't definitively say that, but I do think there's an argument if you were going to get rid of Mendy, why did you wait so long? Why didn't you do this after April? And again, I'm not the quick push the red button guy, but I understand that. The Mets always seem to be reactive, not proactive.
And that's something Stearns said he was going to be better at.
We haven't seen it, though.
No.
We haven't seen it. But this, which is to your point, Ant, this is why this trade deadline coming up is so important. Let's see how proactive they are. How all in are you going to go on this? Will you even be proactive to maybe get some other younger players on other teams that are on cost control deals that you really may like, and you're like, hey, we'll get this guy in? Even a move like that wouldn't bother me. Where you're thinking about 2027 and 2028, I can live with that. If I see some moves like that, I'll be like, okay, I see that. Maybe you're trying to get a young cost control pitcher. You want to get some prospects from this, flip it into that. Somebody could come and help you at the major league level, because that would tell me you're not looking at a long rebuild, but you're still trying to see if you can win next year as well too and get back to the playoffs. Because here's what, regardless of what happens with the cap or no cap, you can't have a high payroll and then 3 years in a row of missing the playoffs, because
the highest
payroll. The highest.
Unbelievable.
Which is, for the Mets fan, embarrassing.
Yeah, it is. Game for War is saying mercy shot for a Met fan is a vodka with Coke. Might be a lot of days like that for the rest of the season. Maybe a lot during this summer that we're having.
I mean, honestly, July and August. War, I don't even think anybody wants it mixed. They want straight vodka, man. That's what they want.
I almost forgot this one. He talked about fan behavior, because there's people carrying signs about fire Stearns. They got taken out of the stadium. And he said you can, express how you're feeling, but if it messes with fan experience, then, you have to be taken out. And I know one thing that I've been seeing, especially on X, people were talking to him about this, but, there are some people, and they hide behind avatars and all this stuff. They just don't know how to conversate normally. And, that'll make Steve Cohen not want to talk as much. And that's the thing that stinks. Is you got some fans out there that, they'll hide behind a picture of a mug, which I saw one of them do. And we're, making, slurs to him. So, like,
yeah,
why should he talk? I'm surprised that he responded back saying, this is why I don't speak on X. But, like, ignore those people.
Yeah. Look, this happens to anybody too. I think with a platform, sadly we have these cowards online who will be have strong Twitter fingers, and they want to say this, and it'll be hateful stuff, and they'll take it to a place where it doesn't need to go. If you're not happy with what Steve Cohen or David Stearns is doing with the team, that's fine. You want to express your displeasure for that, it's also fine. When it gets into anti-Semitic stuff, there was absolutely disgusting, absolutely terrible. I can't disagree with Steve Cohen on this. Like, if people want to bring signs, you want to put a paper bag over your head, whatever, that's fine too. You can't disrupt the fan experience. That's, I think, crossing the line for other people who still come there to try to enjoy the game, try to enjoy the food. Maybe it's their first time they're able to get to a game with their family or friends. You got to let them have the ability to do that. So we got to see that. Anthony, are you there with us, or did we lose you? Thought you froze for a second. I see you now. You're good. No, you're good.
Right,
I thought you lost power, and I was like, I have to hold this down until Anthony comes back.
Okay. All right. One more comment here before we get to the next thing. Stearns put his stamp on Mendoza so many times publicly and still didn't extend him. The problem is he left it in the air for too long. Then he added an interim that you publicly said won't come back. And that's from Carson of Mets Weekly. Mets
what
Weekly
up,
on
Carson?
YouTube. So make sure you check out and subscribe to that show as well. Now, there was another show that came out this past week that had a lot of people talking, and that's Eric Chavez breaking his silence. I want your thoughts on what he had to say, because he goes, David Stearns is running out of bullets, which I would assume is be running out of excuses. It was wrong for him to fire Mendy. Stearns was the wrong hire. He quoted saying, who told Steve Cohen he was the next hire when he really hadn't accomplished much at that major league level. And that's when he's talking about David Stearns. There was a lot of banter back and forth on, obviously he has no love lost for David Stearns. David Stearns obviously fired him, but his old school thinking of baseball versus David Stearns' new way. He didn't feel like the right moves were made during 2024-2025 season. Held on to prospects too long. Getting rid of the core was not the way to go about things. So there was a lot of stuff. He thinks that, Stearns BS the fans, that he has an ego and trying to reinvent the wheel when it comes to baseball. So he does go on to say that he had to take a pay cut. So I feel like there's a little bit of motivation into what he's saying here. I don't want to say he's 100% wrong, because some of the stuff, obviously he's coming out with this now since he's fired, but I don't know if he's 100% wrong on some of the things that he said.
Yeah. This is one of these things for me where it's like, I doubt that I don't think he's 100% wrong, but it's also a consider the source situation. He sounds like a scorned lover. Okay. Yeah. It's like, hey, I don't have my job. Mendy was my guy. He brought me in on the staff. So of course you're going to defend Mendy. I'm not saying that he shouldn't stick up for his guy. I get that. The problem you have with some of the stuff is like, it's timing, right? Like, you're coming out and saying it now. Again, doesn't make him wrong, but you're saying it now. So it's like, well, what am I supposed to do with this information? What can I do with it? Do I think David Stearns doesn't know what he's doing? I think the lacking experience part, that I don't agree with him on. I think we've been hard pressed to find a Mets fan that didn't think that was a good hire at the time when they hired him, based on what he had done in Milwaukee. Almost everybody praised that. Also, I'm going to give that Steve Cohen, as somebody who's been successful in other ventures, I think he understands the importance of, and I think it's something that should be respected about Steve Cohen, is letting people do their jobs. Let professionals do their jobs till they prove to you that they can't do it anymore. That's I want to add that caveat. I think that needs to be done. You got to let the professionals do their jobs, let them cook. You don't have too many. I think Steve Cohen has done that, and I respect that. So Chavez saying, this could happen, or they could have kept this prospect, or like,
look, hindsight's 2020 almost.
Right. All that matters now is that, okay, who's the next manager going to be? Are you going to be proactive at the deadline? Are you going to change things going forward? Are you going to be more adaptable? That is what's going to matter in the hopefully next July 6th, 5th, when we're talking about this, hopefully in a better state for the Mets. That's what we're going to judge in the next year. All the stuff in the past before, it doesn't matter. David Stearns still has some time. Steve Cohen's going to let him cook and try to fix his mess. And we'll see if he does. Either he will or he won't.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't, he won't be here anymore. And I know that'll be disappointing for some people, but that is the reality of where this is. That's the reality of where it is. So to be honest, like, if I'm keeping it a buck here, it doesn't matter what Eric Chavez says. It doesn't matter. I'm not even. It doesn't matter what I say, or you say, or Carson says on his show, you know what I mean? Or John says, and Ibby said, we all can say what we're going to say, but we are going to look at the end of the day, it's got to be about the results, right? And either they're going to get the job done, or we're going to sit here and be like, man, same old Mets.
Yeah. It's funny too, because like you're like, man, this makes sense when it's what Chavez is saying, but then he shoots himself in the foot because his red flags were he had to take a pay cut.
Mm-hmm.
His hitting philosophy
And he
didn't
took
agree
it.
with the minor league hitting philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you remember, he was the bench coach under Buck, and then they put him back
right.
to being a hitting coach.
Right.
And then he wasn't a fan of the way Juan Soto, as he put it, was coddled by the assistant GM and him. So like, he's got a lot of gripe to go against what David Stearns is doing. And, you know, maybe that's part of the reason why they said, you know what, we'll see you later. maybe he's not for us.
Yeah, maybe he didn't fit in. You know, the stuff he's talking about with Soto, I found that interesting because I'm like, look, he's a superstar player. Superstar players are going to roll out the red carpet for them. But everything that I've heard from people I've talked to around the Mets and the limited time I was around the clubhouse last year is that, look, everybody likes Soto. Soto's a very direct guy. He's about his business.
Baseball.
Everybody's heard and read this, but he's very true. Some people I've talked to that are very close to Soto, and they talked to him, had said the same thing to me. And you could kind of, you can kind of see it, right? You kind of can see it with Soto. If you've been around the team in the ballpark, he kind of goes about his business. And it's like, that's fine to me personally. Mm-hmm. Everybody, I say this on all these shows I go on. It's like sports, it's still labor, it's still work. It's still a workspace. And so everybody at my job, your job, doesn't work the same way. We all have to learn to work with different kinds of people. And some people have certain different values to jobs. So sometimes everybody's not going to get treated exactly the same. I think everybody should be treated with respect. Let me be very clear about that. But some people that have maybe more value to a team or are paid more are going to get certain leeways because they have certain value to the company that somebody else doesn't. That's just how it goes sometimes. So Chavez feeling some kind of way about that or acting like Soto's the first star on the team to receive that treatment, that was a bit much to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, he comes across as Chavez probably has some good points. He's probably seen some things. There's probably some things he would have done differently. But it's like, bro, you got fired. You took a pay cut. You probably don't like Stearns. You probably don't like the organization. You sound like a scorn lover.
He does. And the fact that, as he put it, Soto being coddled by, the assistant general manager, and then Chavez going to Stearns to tell him to get him into the dugout. I mean, you have been a major league player for how long? You're a coach on this team. You're kind of making your coaches look bad because that's your job, not the general manager's job to come down from the box or the office and put him in his place. You're the coaches. Like, you're making it sound like the coaches don't matter.
Or like you had no right. The coaches and you had no accountability in this. Like, you're not even holding yourself, or the other coaches don't matter. It's like, this is all in the front office. That's not how it works. Because as I said, I think the front office, I would think, I don't know this for sure, would want to let the coaches do their job.
Yeah.
As they're supposed to, and not meddle all the time. I would think that.
Gio in the chat saying Eric Chavez hid like a little girl in the clubhouse when the Mets hitters were struggling during his time as bench coach. The guy really had some serious issues. He's an example of no accountability. I know he talked a lot on Instagram or whatever it was. Even Carson, who's the biggest Eric Chavez hater, was tired of what he was doing behind the scenes too. I think arguing with fans and stuff like that. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah, and that's to me. I think and Carson. I've seen Carson's comments, and I know Carson's commented in here. I think that stuff rubbed the organization the wrong way.
Yeah,
you got
probably
come on. A baseball organization is not going to want to deal with you doing that stuff on social media. That's not what they want, because they might. I'm not saying he's unhinged, so I don't want to get misquoted or aggregated here. I'm just saying they might look at that and say, well, he's unpredictable. I don't know what he's going to say or do, and that might not be best for business.
Yeah. Like we mentioned earlier, some of these guys kind of really do need media training. Like, I know you feel like you can say whatever you want, but sometimes maybe you really shouldn't. And that kind of leads me back to this with Steve Cohen. I'm saying maybe not talk all the time, because look, this Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto whole issue, and I know that it was brought up during the podcast, and I think it was Cohen who said, I'm trying to get the exact thing of what Cohen said about this, it was something that was last year, and it doesn't seem to be a problem this year. I'm kind of summarizing.
You're paraquoting him, but that is pretty. I'm trying to find it for you because I had taken some notes on this. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I kind of wished he just put it to bed, because now the players are going to still have to be asked questions about this, and that's what sucked. And it did lead to an article that Will Salmon wrote the other day.
I read that.
I don't know if you read it, from The Athletic. Just the wording that was used here. Will Salmon, great at he's been on this show, awesome stuff. But
love Will.
The wording that he used has me concerned about, the relationship is fine. Just fine. He says, earlier this season, one club source indicated the dynamic remains somewhat strained. That's, this season still. And other club sources described the full court press by, Carlos Mendoza at the time to help the two superstars build a stronger relationship that last year drew heavy scrutiny. There were no issues last year at all, Soto said. We didn't have any beef or anything. Definitely our relationship is getting better because it takes time. When you meet a girl, you don't start kissing her right away. I mean, unfortunately, this is going to continue to be talked about. I wish it wasn't, but this is something that needs to be figured out, because, if these two are going to be on this team together, outside of, possibly Lindor being traded or Soto leaving after 5 years, these two got to lead this team. That's the leadership group, is those two high-priced players coming together and leading this team. And we've seen Lindor's leadership in the past. We've seen Soto this year lead a lot of the youngsters. So it's there. It's just, and I don't really care too much about if they don't like the same things, and you just mentioned it at jobs. People are different. It's a different thing. Yeah. I just wish this story would go away, honestly.
I do too. I think there's fans and of other teams that revel in this. I don't think it's a big deal. And when the rumors were coming up last year, I checked in with someone around the team who would know. And the person said to me, I wouldn't say that they are, there's no animosity or beef there, but they're not, the word the person used to me was chummy. They're not chummy like that. And I said to the person, okay, well, yeah, sometimes you're at jobs and there are people you're cool with them. You can get the job done, but you guys are not going out for drinks. You're not going to grab a meal. Yeah. You're not inviting each other out to a birthday party or something like that. It's fine. The key is, can you get the job done? I do think there's some truth to what both Soto and Lindor were quoted as saying in Will Salmon's piece. And it's that, it's going to take time in your relationship. Soto's probably used to coming in for where he's been a lot of times and being the man, but he came into a team with just Francisco Lindor's team. He was the face of the franchise. And there probably was going to be some adjustment with that. And those guys feeling out their space in the clubhouse and how they feel about each other. I don't think that's unusual. I think some fans expect that it was going to come and just be like this. And I'm like, why did you expect that? Like, what precedent do you have to expect that?
I was thinking, maybe it stems from how close that we saw, at least on camera, Juan Soto and Aaron Judge were.
Look to be. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's interesting, right? But Anthony, you and I have connected. We've met. We've been on each other, done videos. Yeah, vibe with you. I like you. We have each other come on each other's shows, and we've talked. We've actually got to meet over the years. And it's like some people, man, you connect with. I've also had meetings with other people where it's just like, oh, okay. And not that anything bad against anybody. I'm just saying that's just how it is sometimes. I think by Steve Cohen saying that he kind of basically acknowledged this was like an issue last year. And somewhat, and Will alluded to that in the start of his piece. But now that it's not, I almost wish Steve Cohen had just said what I just said. When new, highly paid players who are used to being the face of the franchise come into a clubhouse, there's a transition period. These guys are transitioning. They're working on their relationship. They're working on how to lead the team differently in their own ways. They're going to figure it out. We have a great culture here. We're going to work. It's going to get worked out. Because I think it was always going to be part of the process. I don't think it's a problem. If it was a problem if the dudes were like, I can't stand each other, I don't want to work with each other, I don't think that's what it is. I don't think these guys are lying either. I just think they move differently in the clubhouse. They probably are adjusting to another guy of a high stature being there with them. The difference with Soto when he came to the Yankees, to just make that comparison, is Aaron Judge is the captain. The captain is already the captain. Now, some Mets fans might hear me say that and be like, see, Dex, this is why they should have named Lindor the captain. You might not be wrong to those fans, because I've always wondered if Lindor's felt some kind of way since Steve Cohen made the comments that he wouldn't name a Mets captain.
See, and now I'm starting to believe, you know what? Maybe this whole situation between Lindor and Soto, maybe that's why Cohen said, you know what? We're not going with the captain. You guys are going to have to work it out together.
I respect
You're going to have to figure it out together and work on this. Like, it's the only thing I could think of, because it was like, it wasn't even talked about, right? It was, the captain thing was never brought up to Steve Cohen, and he really was like, no, we're not doing captains anymore. I don't like
he just volunteered that information. Nobody asked him that.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I found that interesting too. Again, please, nobody take. I'm not reporting this. I don't know. I just wonder if after that has been said, and we saw Francisco Lindor struggle a little bit in the beginning of the season. Some physical, but I always sometimes worry about the mental for players. Players are human beings. Francisco Lindor has been the face of this franchise. Maybe he was expecting to be the captain. And I think we all would have said, been a fine choice as captain. But
yeah,
maybe the Mets were thinking about, well, what do we do? Soto's probably going to be the face of this team in a couple of years. How does this work out? Maybe the tension just naturally exists between the guys there. It's nothing to do with them not liking each other. It's just, I could see it. I can see the reasons why. I talked to one of my producers. He's always like, who's a Yankee fan, is like, this is a problem. They don't like each other. They hate each other. Soto's a bad guy. But he's a Yankees fan. He's not happy that Soto's not with his team anymore. I don't think it's that, man. I just really don't think it's that. I don't think it's that deep. I do think it's something that has to be worked on. And I do think it's going to be part of this process. But that doesn't mean it's a problem.
Yeah.
I don't think we have to say everything doesn't have to be a problem. Sometimes things are just what they are. It's an adjustment period. Sometimes it's just that. Sometimes it's not. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. And the leadership thing has been, talked about. There could be many leaders in this clubhouse. Marcus Semien was supposed to be a leader in the clubhouse. And there was talks about him being hesitant in the beginning of the season to step up and say something. But you know what? That's what you were brought in for. They didn't bring you in because you were a great bat anymore. They didn't bring you in, just for your defense alone. They was talk about how great of a leader Marcus Semien was. And the fact that, him as well as, Bo Bichette, that they were hesitant on what they should say in the, that's something that needs to be dealt with and figure out, probably mostly in the clubhouse.
Yes.
And they have to figure out a way to, I don't want to say avoid this question, but not to be asked so many times so that they can figure it out on their own. Like I said, in the clubhouse.
I hate to put it like this, Anthony, but the question is not going to go away until they start winning.
That's true.
Because nobody's going to talk about this if they're winning, right? Like that. But I did find that's what kind of jumped out to me more than anything from that piece by Will, was what you just said, how other guys didn't feel like they could speak up. That's when I was like, man, this isn't just a Soto Lindor thing. This is a cultural Mets thing that is permeating down to the clubhouse that has to be figured out. And when you're reading that Mendy was a very vocal voice that the guys seemed to like and was trying to work on that relationship with Soto and Lindor, as he should, that's part of the job of being a manager. It's not just the moves on the field. It's maintaining that clubhouse too. But I think when you guys I don't want to kill Bichette or Semien, because just like a workplace, when you come into a workplace, it's hard. You wait to find your voice. Can I say something here? Do I have enough stature to say something? Do you have enough? But it could feel worse if you don't feel like, I don't know if this ever happened. You've been in a workplace and you're like, yo, but who's really the leader around here? Like,
Yeah.
I've had that experience. You're like, yo, I don't know, because nobody is showing leadership. That's awkward too, right? And you're trying to figure out, okay, where's my place? Somebody's got to step up and be a leader. Some guys feel like they can't lead if they're not producing on the field. Some guys, and this is what I've heard about Soto, people I've talked to, he's a very lead by example guy. I show up early. I get my reps in the batting cage. I'm out on the field. This is how he does things. Francisco Lindor sounds to me like more of a guy that goes around and talks to guys in the clubhouse. And that's fine. To your point that you said, Ant, people have different leadership styles. There's not one way to lead. What we're talking about is how does everybody come together or feel like they're in a safe space in the clubhouse where they can have a voice? It seems from Will Salmon's reporting, and he talked to people and players, some on the record, that there doesn't seem to be a space where people feel like they have the platform that they're able to do that.
It hasn't been talked about much this year, but does it concern you at all that when you hear things like this happening in the clubhouse, Lindor's name seems to be attached? We had the McNeil thing earlier on in his tenure. We're talking about the Soto thing now. I know a lot of fans are kind of 50-50 on Lindor and if he could be the leader. Does that concern you at all? Like I don't know, like some people, maybe Lindor's the problem. I don't think so.
I don't think so, but it's more than fair to think that. Because it's like if something happens all the time and you're at the center of it, it's like, hey man, the problem might be you, right? I'm not saying that the problem is Francisco Lindor, but I don't think it's fair. It's unfair to question that. I don't have enough information. I feel like if there was enough bad things about Francisco Lindor as a leader in the clubhouse, I feel like I would have heard that already. From people I talked to, that's not the case. And even the Lindor McNeil stuff, I just think that had a lot to do with people just not vibing on certain things. And again, this happens in other workplaces too. The difference in sports is we watch these guys daily, and we're like, you got to go produce out in the field the same way you have to go produce at work, even if you don't like your coworker. Sometimes you got to work with people you don't like. I have done it. Trust me. Trust me. I've had to do it and work with people I do not like, do not respect, which is a stronger thing than not liking somebody. There's not liking somebody, there's not respecting somebody. When you don't respect somebody, that's when problems could come in. That's when things get, because you're like, man, I don't even want to be near this person. I don't want to work with them. I don't believe they have my back. I don't care to have their back. And I'm not saying that's necessarily the best attitude out there, folks, but this happens. I've seen this happen between coworkers. I've lost respect for people I've worked with or worked under. I will say that I always hold myself to still be a professional and will always do that. But not everybody can do that. So, yeah, to answer your question, I think it's slightly concerning, Anthony. Do I think there's an issue with Lindor? No, but I understand why people would question it for sure.
Green Machine in the chat saying, I don't care if some of the players don't get along. Winning cures all that. Ultimately, many teams have succeeded with stars not getting along.
He or she is right. Green Machine, you're right. You're 100% right. Like, there's been plenty of teams well documented throughout history that have not liked each other, where guys were fighting in the locker room. Baseball teams this happened to has been dysfunction. And I don't even know how much I put into that. Like, when you're not winning, there's going to be tough conversations. People are going to get called out. This happens. Now, baseball's just so long and there's so many games, right? That when the season gets like where the Mets are now, it's tough, man. It's tough, but bad teams go through bad stretches. The Knicks had a 2-9 stretch in January of this year, and they ended up winning the NBA title. And I can tell you guys for sure, there were tough conversations after that 2-9 stretch between some guys. There were tough conversations when they went down 2-1 in the playoffs. But there was enough leaders in that room, not just Jalen Brunson, that spoke up and was like, this has to be done. the Mets have to get to that part of the culture. I think that's what's disappointing this year, Anthony, is you thought, okay, even when they're going through the April they had, all right, the leadership will show out. They'll step around. Marcus Semien will rally the troops. Well, the rally and the troops, it isn't working. Maureen said in the chat, the 86 Mets didn't get along. She's right. Yeah. That's well documented.
And that was the two leaders, right? Right. Gary Carter and Keith Hernandez, they butted heads.
Hey, and listen, and this was the late 80s.
Yeah.
Where there was cocaine issues. Okay? And that team won. I'm not making fun of that. I'm just laughing at the fact that, like, despite that, to Green Machine's point, they won a championship. So it's like, it's the want to. If you want to figure it out and there's enough talent there, it can't work. I just want to be very clear. I am not saying chemistry doesn't matter. Chemistry matters. It's nice when you get to work and like the people you work with. I hope everybody's blessed to do that. I really do. But sometimes that doesn't happen. You still got to be a professional. So, it is what it is. I think if someone's disrespectful to you, I think I'll say this about anybody. If you work at a job and you don't feel like you're respected, again, that doesn't mean you should show up to the job and with a bad attitude and just be like, F everybody. I don't care. That's not going to get you anywhere. I understand why it would be challenging for you to do your job, right? But at some point, you got to figure out, especially as a team for baseball, because you're trying to work towards a common goal, or at least you're supposed to be, you got to try to figure out some way to get this done.
I want to throw this comment at you from Game 4 because you've been in clubhouses, you've been in locker rooms before. He goes, Eric Chavez said on a video on his channel that the players don't run the clubhouse, that reporters are around too much and they have no privacy, that they hide in the sleeping room where they can't go, and that players can't build chemistry with reporters in the clubhouse. I don't think I believe that, because the reporters only have a certain amount of time that they can be in the clubhouse at all.
Correct.
And that's their time. Like,
it's
same every day, right?
Every day. And it's extremely limited. Also, in my years of being in baseball clubhouses, and I'll specifically talk about the Mets, the Mets have been very gracious to reporters through their PR staff over the years that have been in there. Over the, I can't think of any times that it's been that. It's not a long time. Like, I would say maybe if something like a regular season game, I'm talking about, guys, because postseason could be a little bit longer, but maybe in a regular season game, maybe the most time you could spend in a clubhouse is maybe an hour, if even. But most days is somewhere between 30 to 40 minutes, probably. Again, if something crazy happens, an extra innings game, somebody to walk off, that person's coming out the shower late or something like that. That's the stuff that can happen. A lot of guys may want to talk. It's also about who the Mets make available, just to be clear with people. The reporter, they ask the media who we'd like to talk to, and they'll make certain players available. Obviously, they'll know if it's a pitcher who started that day, that person's going to be available, right? That's how it goes. But nah, man, like, for Chavez to say that the reporters spend too much time in the clubhouse, no. And think about it. Guys are in the clubhouse way before reporters get to the ballpark. The reporters don't get to go in before the game. They only have availability after the game. They will talk to the manager before the game, but they do not talk to, and that's usually in the press conference, you're not in the clubhouse until after the game. And like I said, 40 minutes tops, generally, in a regular season game. Maximum maybe an hour. The most I've ever spent in the clubhouse. So, no. I think Chavez saying that is a bunch of crap. It doesn't track.
I've been in the Jets locker room and the Knicks in the, I want to say that 2012, 2013, that run with Carmelo. Run? Yeah, that run with Carmelo, especially even during the playoffs. The media has to be tightened up. You get a certain amount of time to ask a certain amount of questions, even if they allow you. And sometimes you're sitting. The only time you're in there for a long time is if Carmelo Anthony's making you wait while he gets himself freshened up.
And that happens in baseball too. Yeah. It happens in football. Sometimes you're waiting on the last athlete, the star athlete generally, who doesn't. And I'm not saying it's a shady athlete. That's just how it is in a lot of these sports. So that's where your time might be long, and that's not at the control of the PR staff. It's not like in the playoffs where they bring everybody to the podium and it actually makes your life a little bit easier to talk to star players because there's just so much more media just to take people behind the scenes a little bit. But nah, man, I think I'm going to put it like, I don't mean to disparage Eric Chavez, but if you're ever looking at the media being in the clubhouse too much as the reason an organization isn't winning, that to me is a loser mentality. And
they don't even ask the coaches he's not getting asked questions.
No,
what's he complaining about?
No, media doesn't even talk to. I mean, you can talk to like a third base coach. They don't really talk to the media. You can maybe have an off the record chat with them on the side around batting practice on the field before the game. That can happen.
Yeah,
but they're not made available to us. You're only talking to the manager for the most part. And that's it. That's the same thing even in basketball. In football, sometimes they'll make the coordinators available at times during the week, but that's not how it works in baseball. So yeah, I just think, man, Chavez's comments there just no, like no, man. No. That's not how it works.
Carlos Ramos in the chat. Thanks for chiming in, my friend. Forget not respecting your teammates. You just deal with that in order to win. The problem is when you don't respect the people in charge and you watch them not be held accountable.
Carlos, I will say to that, because I think the point you make is a good one. The latter of what you just said, when you don't respect the people in charge and you don't see them being held accountable, that is problematic. I've also witnessed that in my career. But what I will say is the whole thing, what you're saying about accountability, anybody not being held accountable, I think is going to rub, again, let's just look at this as work, the wrong way. When you're not seeing it,
you've seen it.
Yeah, if you're not seeing it up top, which Carlos is talking about and is 100% right, and you're not seeing it even from your peers, no matter who's paid what, I think that's problematic. I can see, to Carlos's point, how if you're an athlete and you're training, you're busting your ass out there, you are trying to get ready, you know, maybe things aren't working out for you, maybe you're not having your best season, but you look at this and say, hey, I know that we're accountable. I know that players have agency. I know we're expected to perform, but this guy that puts the team together, where's the heat on him? It's not unfair. It's not unfair. Listen, it's never one thing. It's not one reason this Mets. I've said this all season long. This isn't just on Stearns. This isn't just on Mendy. This isn't just on Steve Cohen. This isn't just on the players. It's a whole pie. Now, you could argue about who has a bigger slice of the blame pie. That's fine. But there's a lot of things on everybody, and this is there's no way to not look at the Mets and the lack of success that they've had and lack of sustainability and not say the problem isn't systemic. There's something systemically wrong that has to be fixed.
Well, and then that leads to, there's one of these comments here. I think it was from Manish Mim saying nothing is changing unless they clean house. We have plenty of evidence that the culture is toxic.
I mean, yeah, maybe. Yeah, I'm not saying that to be dismissive, Manish. I'm saying that to be like, sure. I mean, there's no reason for the Met fan to not look at this. If you're a Mets fan of at least a certain age, I would say at least 30 and over, you've been watching enough baseball where you're just like, look, man, this feels the same. We talked about this at the top of the show, Anthony. This feels the same. And you have to start saying, okay, what's wrong here? When are you going to actually see something that's different? You felt it for a little bit, but you haven't seen it sustained. I think what Mets fans want is, I know the motto is you got to believe, but they would like to believe that the front office, that they can trust the front office. I think the trust is gone between the fan base and the team. Has long been gone. I don't think they trust in front office because they've seen so much change. Oh, it was Billy Epler before. Now it's David Stearns. And I'm not saying that David Stearns is Billy Epler and we should see more time, but it feels like Billy Epler. I'll say that much. It feels like Billy Epler. I do agree with you, and I think this is worse than 2023. But it feels like 2023. Right? Or it's like Mets fans have felt this feeling before, and something in the culture has to change. I thought the culture would have changed more with Steve Cohen buying his team. And I want to say that I do think there's great things that he's done around the culture of this team that, you know, you and I have talked about over the last couple of years, what they've done with the jersey retirements and bringing back the Old Timers Day and, the
everything in
Alumni
the
Day.
stadium. Like,
Has been dope, and I love it. I think it's been great. But here's the thing: all that stuff is nice. All that stuff is nice. I can say it's dope and it's great, but if there's no wins, you're not seeing the product on the field get better, nobody cares.
Yeah. No, exactly. We're going to wrap up with news and happenings. It's just got one note here, and then we'll just take a few more comments, and then we'll wrap up the show. Juan Soto made the All-Star team. He'll be the starting left fielder. It's his 5th All-Star appearance, first as a Met and second as a starter this season, batting .299. I can't believe I'm seeing a Met bat close to 300 because it just feels like, I know a lot of people don't love batting average anymore. It still means something to me. Batting .299, I think, is a feat in itself. He's got 18 homers, 43 RBIs, and 964 OPS. He was quoted saying, I definitely have got to thank all my fans. I've got to thank all the fans in Dominican Republic that make it possible. Thanks to the people in New York, too. They really brought a lot. Met fans are unbelievable. I really appreciate everything that they have done for these past 2 years. It's great seeing myself where I started in the votes and then seeing where I finish. It's incredible how he was able to get there. So Juan Soto makes the All-Star team, really outside of maybe Luke Weaver as well, the only deserving players on this team to get into the All-Star game. Quickly, what are your thoughts on just Juan Soto, especially his tenure here? I know he struggled a lot with runners in scoring position, but somehow his stats seem to be kind of what you paid for.
That's how great he is.
Yeah.
We saw this last year, right? Like when he had the slow first base, he's 6 to 8 weeks, and then he just, took off. He's that good. I mean, he's a pleasure to watch at the plate. It's just his plate discipline, his eye. You realize what you paid for, like you said. And in a very dull Met season, where you haven't had much to root for beside Juan Soto and AJ Ewing and Carson Bench, good to see the Mets will have a representative, at least in the lineup down in Philly. But it also makes you sad because you're like, man, what if they had some people hitting around him? That how much better the lineup could be if they had some guys hitting around him.
It feels like A-Rod in his Texas Rangers days.
Oh,
am I right? I mean,
no,
but
was
50 home runs, 140 RBIs, and the team was
trash.
Bonkers. Yeah.
But I'm glad you took it there. I hadn't thought about that as a comp, about how maybe these last year's a little tough because they started out good, but this year must feel to Juan Soto. You better be careful, is all I'm saying, in the next couple of years. When I say you better be careful, I mean the Mets, because you do not want a guy in his prime still putting up these great numbers and feels he's getting paid. And you might tell me, well, that's what the money is for, right? But he wants to win. Well, I can tell you, Juan Soto wants to win. And if they are not winning, yeah, he could be like A-Rod saying, I was going to say go to the Yankees. Could you imagine Juan Soto leaving the Mets and trying to go back to the Yankees?
I could. In the state we're in,
you know why?
Because
you're a Met fan. That's why, Anthony. That's why you can see that. That's why.
I could see. I mean, even when they signed that deal for Soto, I kind of felt like they were in a good position because, okay, only 5 years committed. If he wants to leave, then that's $50 million, especially now with this possible salary cap and all that stuff coming. Probably could work out for them, but it would suck to lose, to have wasted what is his prime years with what we've seen. And we've seen a lot of players come here and their time being wasted. We saw a couple years of that with Piazza and Wright, and there's just been so much that this team has struggled with. I mean, even you could talk about DeGrom and Alonso, all the wasted time. And it just seems to happen. That's what's been so consistent about this team. We want them to be a consistent winner, but we've seen the consistent. I think we should have said the losing's been consistent. Someone said that earlier on the show.
Yeah,
but that's been the frustration.
Does this disappoint? Because every period of Mets history, when you thought there could be some, this is the time there could be some sustainability, there just hasn't been. You've got to a high. You talked about the 05 to 07 years. 08 years, if you want to talk about. And the beginning of that was so great. And the last bit of it was just so, it's like after they got rid of Willie Randolph, nothing felt the same.
Yeah.
And, the middle of the last decade and getting to the World Series and all the young arms they had and I think every Met fan was like, we'll be back. We got arms. No. And that I get it, man. That's the frustrating part. And I mean that seriously. I think that's why the Mets have to be careful and have to get this right and be proactive, because you don't want to lose Juan Soto. You got to keep this guy happy and make him feel like he's got a chance to win and produce in the postseason. And now it's going to be 2 years with the Mets, and he's not going to play postseason baseball. And I to your point, to just bring it back to where you started, Ant, and I was thinking about this as you said it, about Steve Cohen speaking less. Nobody's going to want to hear a mandate of playoffs or bust next year. Nobody's want to hear it.
No.
You don't want to hear it.
Yeah, I don't want to hear that. I don't want a letter in the mail. That's what I got. 2023. I got a letter in the mail. So we're sorry.
I remember you talking to me about this. Yeah.
We apologize. Next year, no more letters, no more nothing. Get to business and get this team to be a consistent winner. Because as much as I love miracle runs from this team, you want to talk about 99 and 2000, 2024, 2015. When you get those miracle runs and you make it deep into the playoffs, you need to finish the job, because that mojo doesn't exist for the rest of next year. Everyone wanted Jose Iglesias back and JD Martinez back. The mojo does not continue on with miracle runs. That's why the Yankees, they may not have a miracle World Series. They dominated for most of that time, but they're consistently winning to get to the playoffs. And that's what I want to see this team do. We would
love it just to see the team consistently get to the playoffs. What was it? The Braves, when they first started, it was like they had the one championship in 95 and they did like one title in 15 years or whatever. But consistently, they've always had a shot. Fans will sign for that if you can just give them a shot. You make a great point about how when you have one of these magical runs, and we just watched this with the Knicks.
Yes, absolutely.
And I always hate using the word magical around the Knicks, because I think they just played really amazing basketball for a stretch. They finally played to their capability of what that team could do. I'm not surprised that they did it. They had it in them to do it, but they played amazing, dominant basketball. And when they got to the finals, even I was like, they got to finish this. And I thought there was a time when I thought they could do it. And I was like, they had to finish it. I think the difference is I thought that team had the talent to finish it. I think in all the runs, maybe the one exception I'll say is 2015, because I thought the Mets could finish it that year. I did. And I really thought the Mets could win in 2006. I really thought they could.
I always say this on the show. That was the last time I believed in a team from start to finish. I was like, okay, this is the year. After that, I have never felt the same about any team. Even 2015, it was.
I agree with you.
Please, let's just get this done. That's how I felt.
But the 2006 team, that I believe, that's the Met team I believed in my bones that could win. There was just something about the way that team played. It almost, in some ways, reminded me, it's when I threw the run, how I was feeling about this Knicks team that just won. There's a time when you watch a team and you're like, they got it. Mm-hmm. And I thought that team had it. When you see it sometimes, you're like, I was wrong. I didn't feel it with 2015. I thought they could do it, but I didn't have that same, Anthony, that same conviction. I didn't have that same conviction. So you're right. I think for me, it's also been the same time since I felt that way about a Mets team. I've enjoyed runs, but I haven't felt that same way.
A couple more comments here. Gio saying there's a rumor that Carlos Beltran has quietly accepted to be the Mets manager. I know there was talks about, I think it was Bob Nightingale posted something, not that he accepted the job, but like he's a front runner. And the rumor JD Martinez will be hitting coach, Albert Pujols will be bench coach. Any thoughts on that? I think Albert Pujols wants to be manager. I don't think he wants to be a bench coach, especially since he's managed in the WBC for the Dominican Republic. JD Martinez, I thought, said he's not want to be a coach. I don't know where all this is coming from. Honestly, I don't know. But I mean,
I saw JD Martinez say that too.
Yeah, Carlos Beltran and Albert Pujols are probably going to be talked about this offseason. I wouldn't be shocked.
I talked about this last week on my show. I was a big fan of Carlos Beltran getting hired. Obviously, he will get his number retired later this summer, which will be one of the highlights of this year. I I've always long said, we just talked about the 06 team. I think Carlos Beltran was probably in my lifetime one of the most underappreciated Mets. So I'm a big fan of Carlos Beltran. I think he will be a good manager. I was excited when the Mets had hired him before they had to then terminate that. I think it's been enough time since the Astros scandal. I'd be fine if Carlos Beltran. I think Carlos Beltran's got a lot of experience working in front offices, being on benches. I think he'll be fine. I think he's the right guy to come in that is not that far removed from the game, that can still connect with the players. And I think he will be about accountability and work ethic. I think he would command the respect of a guy like Juan Soto and Lindor. I think Beltran will be a great hire, not just because he's a former Met, because I know people sometimes get tied up in that too. But I actually think he would be a good hire. Thank you, Carlos, for enjoying my words. I'm just saying what I think might be true. I don't have all the answers for everything, but I'm just saying what I think could be true. Yeah, I have no listen. If they had that, I will say this too. From having talked to Albert Pujols twice last fall,
yes,
and he said it with me. He wants to manage. You could tell he wants to manage, and he takes it seriously and really loves the game. I had a couple good conversations with him about New York baseball and at an event I was at, and he really loves the game, and I think he's going to be a good manager too. If the Mets hired Albert Pujols, would I be mad at that? No, I know some people say he doesn't have any experience. I'm like, here's my thing to Mets fans. I'll say this, Anthony. We've seen it all. We've seen experience. We've seen no experience. Why do we care anymore? Does it matter?
After watching this Knicks run,
yeah,
I'll tell you this. It will be the person you least expect that will bring this team a championship. Did anyone honestly believe that it would be Mike Brown? That now people want to make a statue for him outside of Madison Square Garden. I don't think anyone, maybe he could get them there, but I don't think anyone thought he was going to be the guy to bring the championship.
I was one of the rare people when they fired Thibodeau last year who said, I liked the decision to fire Thibodeau. I thought it was the right move. And when they hired Mike Brown, I said, I like this hire because of something I'm going to say. It's interesting because he was a guy that had a lot of experience, had been in a couple different spaces, but then it worked under Steve Kerr, and I thought that stuff mattered. Here's what I'm going to say for the Mets, too. I think you're right, Anthony. I think you're right. The person who does it going to be a person you don't expect. You get to Carlos Beltran, no managing experience. Albert Pujols, still be the guy.
Yadier Molina.
Yeah, my thing is, why not? Why not? Why you can't get experience unless somebody gives you a shot and believes in you to say, hey, I think you can do this. This is what I'd want out of the hiring search from a Mets fan. You need Steve Cohen and David Stearns to believe that this person fits to where you're going to go. For some reason, Leon Rose and James Dolan believed that Mike Brown was the guy because of the word they kept using, collaborative. And I think that's going to matter for the Mets too. It can't be one way. As we're talking about with David Stearns, it has to be collaborative. You got to hear ideas from different places. You have to be adaptable. You have to be willing to do different things. I actually think Mendy was a lot of those things. So I want to be clear. But I think I think managing in baseball today, you really have to be adaptable. You got to be collaborative. You got to be able to talk to your players. You got to be able to talk to your staff. Hopefully they're not like Eric Chavez. You got to be able to do all that stuff. And
he may never coach again after opening his mouth.
Yeah, because how you carry stuff matters, right, my friend? It matters. And yeah, I think that at some point you're gonna have to give a guy like a Beltran or a Pujols or a Yadier Molina or those guys a shot. And I think that matters. Like, sure, you can go get somebody with experience, but
the experienced winners, they're not available because their teams are not giving them up.
Why would
now
they?
Maybe an Alex Cora. He's had the experience.
I think he's the best manager available. I think he's the best manager available. It seems like the line to him to the Phillies is pretty clear because of his past relationships. But if I'm the Mets, I'd make him a strong offer because I think Alex Cora is a winning manager that could come in and change the culture. But I also think you can change culture without experience or with having some failure, as we saw with Mike Brown. If you want to call it failure, I look at his learning experiences, but if you want to do that, that's fine. Mendy may get another job and he may be great because of the experience he had in New York. I don't think he's done as a manager because I don't think he's a bad manager. I think he just forgot how to manage.
It would be apropos that, for everything that Carlos Beltran is remembered for, which is the 06 strikeout, that he comes in here and delivers the championship. I feel like that would be the happiest of endings
for him.
Anything for him, and just to finally, put that 06 thing to bed, because there's still fans that are harboring that stuff. And this guy's his number's going to be retired, and he's going into the Hall of Fame.
He's a great Met. He's a great Met. I say he's the most underappreciated Met of my lifetime. I've been saying this for years. Like, just look at these numbers. People can, if you are hung up on him not getting the bat off his shoulder for the Adam Wainwright curveball at the end of the NLCS in 06, you did not appreciate Carlos Beltran. And I think here's the thing about that. Here's what I like about Carlos Beltran coming in. He was a great leader. Everybody knew that about him in the clubhouse. That was always spoke about when he was in Houston for this cup of coffee, when he was in Kansas City, when he was with the Mets. This was always talked about. My thing here is he knows, because he played in it. He knows how starved this fan base is for a title. He felt 06. I think that matters when you go and coach and look these guys in the eyes that are playing in Flushing. That matters, because he could tell them, look, we got to bring this to this fan base. This is how we're going to get it done. And look, that 06 Mets team, I'm sorry to bring it back to that, Ant. That 06 Mets team, and I think the reason you felt so good about them, that was as together as a team as we saw. Together. Those are all different kind of dudes on that team.
Oh,
but
yeah.
That was together. That team was really together.
It took injuries to derail them. They went all the way to Game 7 of the NLCS. It took injuries to derail that whole situation.
And I still believe in my heart.
They would have beat
Detroit.
They would have beat Detroit.
I still believe that to this day.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah. No, I'm glad. I'm forgetting the person who brought that up in the chat, Beltran and everybody else. But yes, I think Beltran would be a good manager.
Gio says Beltran has championship experience. Players will respect what he says and listen.
I agree.
Carlos Rim was saying, as a fellow Boricua, between Alex Cora and Carlos Beltran, I prefer the 5-tool player who's the greatest center fielder that ever played for the New York Mets. I have one more question for you. It's kind of more of a media question from G Money Stacks here, saying John Sapanaro from Till Mets to His Part said that journalism is dead because he feels that the New York media asks weird questions. How do you feel about journalism if it really, his term, really is dead?
So it's funny because John and I have had sometimes some conversations about things in journalism that actually are not related to sports. So I know where John is coming from on the point of making this, and as somebody who is a journalist, this is a topic that is near and dear to me, and I'm glad the question's been asked. So I'm going to answer this as honestly as I can. I don't think it's dead. Dead is a strong word. I think there are aspects of it that have been dying because of a variety of things. One being, there's been a lot of influence politically on different news organizations, and sometimes the unwillingness to report the truth. Now, this doesn't always cross over into what we do in sports, but sometimes that does matter. I also think the other thing is, particularly, I'm going to keep this to sports now, there's a lot of, desire to go for clicks and advertising over actually investment in good journalism. Because to have good journalism it takes investment. To have good content of anything around it, right? It takes investment of time, resources, which is sometimes money. It takes that. I think you're getting less of that from outlets, mainstream media outlets, which is why a lot of people who know me, and I've said this on your show, Anthony, I've said this on other shows I've gone on, it's a huge part of why the way I try to operate my work and the way I try to support independent content creators and journalists in working harmoniously together is so that you can have diverse voices, because I think that matters a ton in journalism. I think if it's just one way, because we talked about adaptability, and you're just hearing one voice or one thing shaped and framed a certain way, I don't think that's good for journalism. I think reporters who were, I'm going to talk specifically, let's talk about the Mets. I think reporters who covered the Mets, and are going out there and doing a great job. I think my colleagues do a great job. Mike Puma does a fantastic job covering the team. I think John and Joel are guys who do great journalism in baseball. They're going to ask the tough questions. They're not afraid to ask the tough questions. We shouted out Will Salmon earlier, who does an amazing job with The Athletic, who gives them a lot of the resources to be able to do good journalism. The reason Will is able to do that piece that we referenced earlier about the Soto Lindor relationship and some other things that he's written in the last couple of weeks is because he's not the kind of reporter that has to write a game story. He can actually write the stories that are being told around the Mets, because that is what The Athletic and the New York Times is invested in. That stuff still matters. That matters a ton. So I think, and I know this, I just want to be very clear on John, because I know I've had these conversations with John. I think John is, and he's right to, because I am sometimes too, I think he's disillusioned a little bit with the way things have been going with media. And I think he's right to, the way when you see things and how media is intertwined with social media. And I think there's a lack of nuance. And I think you've known me for a little bit in the way I operate in my shows, and you doing your shows. And we just had a great conversation for almost 2 hours that is nuanced about the Mets. Like we're not here giving you hot takes. And we're listening to fans who are giving us their nuance, and that matters too, because we could have a hot take show and we could say, hey, let's talk the hottest take. Like, nah, like we talked about this with depth, and I hope that people listening to this took that from that. I hope so, because this is what I think a journalistic or a content creator experience should be, in my opinion. That's just my opinion on it. The reason I don't say it's dead is because I think there's things like this that exist. That's why I don't think it's dead. I think there are people fighting to keep it alive with the standard of what it should be. And I hope to personally continue to be a part of that. But I think the only way you do it is, one, you got to make the people part of it and understand that you serve the people. It's not about you. That's my first thing on it. And two is that you make sure you connect with diverse voices and don't try to have your content, no matter what it is you do. I say this to my fellow content creator friends: don't have it be stagnant. How much beautiful things have we've talked about this, Ant, or we've done together, or you with other people. Shout out to our friend Hector with Uptown Sports, like people we've connected with that are doing amazing things because we've been willing to have different perspectives, right?
Yeah.
And sorry, I see if you could bring up this comment from CG Ramos here, who I think brings a very good point. Is talks about cheap engagement over quality. So Dex, quality journalism always drives engagement, but lowering the level and quality with clickbait cheapens the end product. You're right. But thank you, Carlos. I think you said that even tighter than I did. You're right. That is what I fundamentally believe. And that's what I feel. Like that's what I believe. There's always going to be pressure to do that. Sometimes we have companies that'll do that. I am grateful that my bosses have allowed me to do things in the way I've been able to do it. And I'm always going to go for the nuance and have good conversations. That's what I've always tried to do. And I think that matters. And I think when I talk to my fellow reporters who cover teams and they hop on the shows, we try to approach it the same way. But not everybody does that. And I understand that. And that's their choice. But I think that's also the beauty of having options and why I support my fellow content creators, because that's a good thing. That people just don't have to go to ESPN and that's not shade to ESPN, to be very clear. They just don't have to go to one place. I'm just talking about them because they're the worldwide leader and what people think about in sports. But these communities that we can form among the Mets content creation family, look, we had Carson in here and, other people here from other shows that support each other. And I think that's beautiful. That stuff matters, man. That stuff matters. And, so yeah, I'm not going to say it's dead. What I will say I just want to toss it back to the fans is that if you agree with what Carlos said or what I said, then support quality journalism, support quality content creators, invest your time and, resources into those people and uplift those people that you think are good voices and doing it right. That would be my advice to it, because that's how we keep it alive.
Yeah. And collaboration is key. I feel like that. And you've really opened the pathway for a lot of us to be a part of that mix and networking and all of that. I mean, today, one of the hockey shows I worked for, my friend works for Visson and asked for a Yankee. Do you know anybody that covers the Yankees? And I was like, hey, Hector Beauchamp. And the collaboration just worked from there. So us working together, networking, and I think that's what's going to, keep the journalism alive. And I really,
I agree.
I appreciate what you've done for my career and helping me out, and what you've done for a lot of other content creators. It's huge, and to have all these big spaces, and you have different kind of content creators. You got Nick's Fan TV and Nick's Film School, and those guys are people that we all look up to, and it's nice to see that we can create a community not only of content creators, but build the community of fans out as well.
Yes. And I always say, I think people should know that, like you and I, we connected on LinkedIn. I think you asked me, it was on a betting show, right? You hit me up to come on. And then I didn't know you did the Mets podcast, and I checked out your Mets podcast, and I actually listened to it, and I was like, oh, this is like good. And then you asked me to be on, I think it was like your season preview show. I think that was 23, the 23 season. You asked me to do that.
I think it was episode 100.
I think so. I think that was my first time on here. And again, I say that, I share that just to tell people, like, your connections can just come from being fans of other people's work, and then just like trying to bring them into your work, and beautiful things can come out of that if you open up, man. We're stronger when we work together, and a lot of times in this space, there aren't a lot of Black or Latino or Asian voices that we're not seeing that. So I think this is where some old school people in journalism, they get mad at the content creator community, or they are resistant to it. And I'm like, man, that you're hustling backwards if you're thinking like that. That's just stupid. You could only open up your doors more. You know what I mean? If you connect with people, just work with people you like, so you don't have to have any beef in the clubhouse, in your clubhouse. That's
a great way to wrap this whole entire show up in a bow there. Dexter, man, you've given me over 2 hours. Dude, I can't appreciate you enough for doing that. Let everyone know what you're working on. I know you got a new newsletter or Substack out. Let everyone know about that, and just put it all out there.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for. It's funny. I haven't promoted this yet. Yeah, I have a Substack called The Other Side of the Game. I've just been writing from time to time on different things. I now might have been inspired for this conversation to maybe write about clubhouse dynamics. That might be something I might dive into at some time. Maureen, I see your comment. You're right. Need more women in the space. I agree with you on that 100%. For sure. I always feel like I need more women in the space. Shout out to the ladies from the Why Am I Mets Fan podcast who do a fantastic job. Ashley and Sam. They're great there. So yeah, we've been working on some stuff with that. Obviously doing stuff with New York Post Sports. New episode of New York Got Game is dropping tomorrow at noon. Also, a new episode of Straight Outta Flushing will be dropping tomorrow afternoon, probably sometime around 3. We have some fun stuff coming up with Straight Outta Flushing, because these are interesting times, Anthony. We gotta I don't want to say scrape the bottom of the barrel, but we got to do some interesting things for content, because the Mets are not giving us much to talk about right now. So I got that coming up, and then I do my Liberty show with my great colleague Madeline Kenny. Liberty starting to play some good basketball again, Liberty lately, so you can check out all those shows on the New York Post Sports YouTube channel. But just trying to enjoy the summer, Anthony. I gotta have you back on for some Met stuff pretty soon. But thank you for having me as always. I greatly appreciate it. I always love coming on and talking with you, man. It's always fun.
I gotta post this from G-Money says you're an inspiration. G-Money saying thanks for being an inspiration to every content creator, including himself. So that's
keep
that
going, G-Money. Keep going. Just keep going, man. Just keep going. I try to tell to everybody, just keep going. So thank you for that.
Well, again, Dexter, I appreciate you so much. You can follow Dexter at DHenryTV, as well as the New York Post Sports, NY Post Sports on X, on YouTube, and make sure to subscribe to Substack. It is correct?
Yeah, Substack. The Other Side of the Game. You can find me on Substack.
The Other Side of the Game. And catch the Straight Outta Flushing podcast with our good friend Wardy. I hope every time I see Wardy on his channel, I'm getting a little more worried. The games are getting worse. I hope that he's doing all right. I know he gets very frustrated in his reaction videos.
Well, I'm gonna see how he's doing in the. I text him today. I'll see how he's doing in the morning, because he's I've been talking about what I just said about how we're gonna have to get a little bit more creative in these conversations. With that, I think he's real apathetic right now, is what I'll say about the Mets.
What is more creative than trying to figure out a way to explain the Mets blowing a 10-3 lead in the 9th inning to make it 10-9 and giving us all heart attacks.
I don't know, man. I don't know what's more creative than that. Like I really don't. You know what? Thank God for the World Cup, because that's been you and I were talking about that before we came on here.
And
let's give me some joy.
Thanks to the Mets for stinking it up this season, I'm finally going to get into the English Premier League.
I've been trying to get Anthony into, for people who don't know, I'm a big Liverpool fan. I've been trying to get Anthony into some English Premier League soccer for a couple of years. He's just like, it's another team, which I understand that I have to focus on, and I got that. But like, I've been watching Anthony on social media really enjoy the World Cup, and that's brought me a lot of joy because I love soccer. It's my second favorite sport, and seeing Anthony enjoy it. Now he's telling me, he's like, I think I'm gonna watch the Premier League this year, and I'm like, come on, my friend, I love it.
I was told one team I should not root for because they are like the Mets is Tottenham Hotspur, and I'm like, I don't think I could do two Mets.
Do you know what happened with them this season? This past season?
They had a really bad. I was looking at the standings. They had a really bad season. They almost got.
They were
relegated.
almost relegated. Yep.
Yeah, I don't need another Mets in my life.
I would say that is a very Mets. That's a great comp for English Premier League football. They're very Metsy. They spend a lot. They are a big club, but they have a very up and down history. They have not had sustained success to bring it all back home.
Well, I told you off the air. I think this season I'll enjoy the season, and try to pick something from there and see where it goes.
I think you're going to choose. Because I know your personality. I think you're going to. This is why I think Liverpool would be a good match for you. I'm not saying to become a fan. If you want Shea parking lot's a Manchester United fan. Don't do that, Anthony.
And so is Carlos Ramos. I think he's also a Manchester. Right?
I liked you. All these great comments, and now I found out you're a Manchester United fan. Oh God, I love that. We're gonna have to do like a Mets EPL meetup. We're gonna have to do that one day. We gotta make that happen. We're gonna make that happen. What I was gonna say to you is Liverpool is like, they're more like the Steelers. You know, I'm a Steelers fan. They're a little bit more like that. They have a strong model of sustainability. Never get too low. They might not win every year. They don't have the most money, so they have to really do well in development. But it's a good.
Are they owned by the Red Sox?
They are. That's the one thing some people may not like. They are.
I do. I will say this. One of my favorite players right now, Mo Salah from Egypt.
Got his jersey right here behind me.
Yep. He I love that guy. So I don't know. Maybe we'll see.
He left the team. This was his last year. So his last year he was with us.
See, that's something that kind of pushes me away from it. I don't understand transfers, trades, signings. Yeah. Someone's gonna have to give me
I'll get you all caught up with it. I think you're doing it the right way. I think you should watch the league and then see what team you identify with. Yeah. You might be interested with like which team grabs you, and you're just like, okay. I just like that you like the sport. I think it's a great sport. I think it's a fun sport to watch. I think it's fun to have your club teams and watch international stuff. It's fun.
And this has been probably one of the best World Cups I can remember. 2006 was another one of my favorites when Italy won. Mm-hmm. But every game has been outstanding so far. So, Dexter, again, appreciate you, my friend. You can follow me on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Subway to Shea. Follow me on X at AntRivera86. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. The show will be up later tonight at some point. And if you want to be a part of the chat and conversation, you're doing that right here on YouTube. You can support me with super chats, super stickers, and super thanks on YouTube. And you can email me any comments, questions, subwaytoshay@gmail.com. Appreciate you again, Dexter. Thanks for joining Subway to Shea again. And we'll do this soon at some point. But appreciate you, my friend. For Anthony Rivera, for Dexter Henry, this has been Subway to Shea. And always remember, let's go Mets.